On X, there has been a silly Twitter argument about Ed Dutton's book about Jonathan Bowden. It was all too predictable that somebody would quibble about some fact that they don't think was correctly stated in the book. And I don't claim to know the ins and outs of it, but I did predict a while back. I don't know if I actually said anything at the time, but I remember thinking to myself, even if I did not post about it, that it was obviously a potboiler for Ed Dutton, who had a book deal to write a book about the most, I suppose, Jonathan Bowden, because he was considered to be a great orator, was considered a great loss to nationalism when he died in 2012 in an institution, having lost his mind. This should tell you everything you need to know about Jonathan Bowden. I'm not saying I didn't find his speeches engaging and, even electrifying, because he was able to state clearly what he thought, and he said that he expressed the feelings of nationalists more elegantly than any other speaker, and he was able to do it without referring to his notes. So, for that reason, he should be acknowledged as a talent. So, it is only to be expected that amongst all the failures of nationalism that are still alive now, Nick Griffin and a few of the others whose names don't come immediately to mind, it is the dead, deceased Jonathan Bowden that is thought of with feelings of loss and regret. So it is only to be expected that somebody should write a book about him and that it should arouse some comment. But what is the point of arguing about somebody who died in 2012, in the year 2025, when he was alive, he never even proposed a solution? It would be understandable if he said, oh, let's do this, let's do that. And you could say, well, if he was right, that what he recommended could have become some political manifesto. But the point is that he never proposed a solution. He only complained about it like most other people. I don't recall him particularly blaming Jews. I think he was quite complimentary about the Muslims, saying that Islam was very right-wing. I also remember him saying that he wondered if the ancient philosophers even believed in the gods that they claimed to worship, and he wondered if he would have joined them, even if he didn't quite believe in Zeus and Apollo and all the other ones. So that was quite an interesting point to make. But the point is that he never proposed anything, and therefore there really is no point in arguing about who said what and whether they were correct. It is a waste of time. Obviously, I think that nationalists should be discussing more urgent things, such as what religion Britain should have, now that they are absolutely sure that Christianity has failed them. In my view, the answer is obvious. The answer should be that they choose the best available moral system for their country. It's obvious, isn't it? If you say you had a Rolls Royce and it broke down and could not be um, could never be made to be roadworthy again. I mean, what do you do? Let's say you have a rickshaw. Let's say you have a tricycle. Let's say you have a bicycle or a chariot or a Nissan Micra or a Jeep or a Volkswagen Beetle or a Toyota Camry or a Hyundai or a Bentley. I mean, out of all these vehicles to replace your Rolls Royce, which one are you going to choose? It's obvious, isn't it? You're going to choose the tricycle, the bicycle, the Nissan Micra, the Hyundai, the coach and horses. I mean, you're going to be choosing the most adjacent vehicle that you had. I mean, if you had a Nissan Micra and you had the opportunity to replace it with a better car, obviously you would be mad not to do that. I mean, it's not like one religion will cost you more than another to implement. Actually, I would say that adopting Sharia would be much cheaper than adopting any religion with a priesthood. So I'm saying you don't need a priesthood at all. The closest group of people, the closest you would get to a priesthood in Islam would be the judiciary. And most civilized countries already have a judiciary, and all you have to do with them is make them take a course in secular Quranism, and then they'll be ready to roll. So I just don't see what the problem is. And, there is no need for a priesthood. In fact, a priesthood is actually a parasitic class that you don't really need to have, because obviously they're going to, abuse their power and molest children. So this is the sort of conversation that nationalists ought to have, instead of, saying, yes, he didn't, no, he didn't, on matters that are trivial and irrelevant to the problems of 2025. But you try telling them anything, they obviously like arguing about nothing and hating each other forever over some trivial dispute that should have been, well, that should never have been a dispute in the first place. But that's how they roll. And I think things are getting worse, just because people are getting older and probably more prone to senile dementia, or just generally stupider and more degenerate. So instead of them wasting their time talking about an irrelevant book about a long-deceased man who never would have been leader anyway because of his emotional fragility, nationalists or anyone interested in British politics should be discussing more urgent and important things, such as the nature and purpose of religion and what is the best religion to replace Christianity, which has clearly failed. So I have made the analogy of a Bentley being closer to a Rolls Royce than, say, a Nissan Micra or a Citroen CV or a Peugeot. I mean, if you can, try and get the best available moral system that you can think of instead of fighting each other over trivial and irrelevant things because you need to feel relevant, I suppose. I see that Howard has popped up to ask if I've been listening to Sargon recently. I'm afraid I haven't. Perhaps you'd like to tell me what he has written, he has said. I guess I could do a quick Google. I thought I was following him on X, but I don't seem to have. Well, he hasn't come on my feed anyway. So what's he been saying? Is he on X? I'll have a look. Oh, good. Well, at least somebody else is rejecting liberalism, and this means the end of liberal democracy. Hopefully, the end of representative democracy, the founding of a one-party state. And once you're a one-party state, you'll be more ready to adopt secular Quranism. This was, in fact, what the founding fathers, George Washington in his farewell speech recommended. He said, he warned Americans never to have political parties because it would be the end of them, and they ignored him. And then the stupid Europeans also decided to have political parties, and, look how stupid and degenerate they are. In the meantime, China has only one political party. It's just best to have, one that is functioning than lots of useless ones, right? I mean, it's just common sense. And okay, common sense. What is it and where has it gone? I fear you can only have common sense if you have a religion, right? Then you'd have common beliefs, and then you'd have common values, and you'd all have to agree to follow the same rules. And then you would therefore think that when you encounter a problem, you would be more likely to agree on the method of solving them. Howard, I'm not sure what you mean by social construction, so please explain it to me. In the meantime, I am looking at Carl Benjamin. There seems to be two. One, Sargon of Akkad, which hasn't got a blue tick. He has 2,881 followers. Okay, he says he doesn't tweet that much anymore. Yes, we have to abandon liberalism, because liberalism, what does it even mean? What principles does it have? It doesn't have any codified principles. So really it only means that you are just saying that you value liberty as a good in itself, but liberty is only what we ought to enjoy after all the necessary laws are in place, and libertarians can never agree on what is the minimum number of laws that we have to live under. Their non-aggression principle it's simply not good enough. And therefore we have to go back to the no-hide laws, because the no-hide laws, according to the late Rabbi Sachs, is the universal minimum moral standard of morality. And this is, it's there. Why don't we just use it? Unless you're an anti-Semite, of course, and obviously lots of Muslims are anti-Semites. So what we need to do next, once we agree that the no-hide laws are the key to agreeing a minimum moral standard, would be to get rabbis to rank the 4 Gentile religions, and when they do that, they would have to find Islam to be most no-hide, Buddhism to be at least principled, but atheistical, and Hinduism as obviously idolatry, and Christianity for being guilty of both idolatry and blasphemy. Right. Thank you, Howard, for being my eyes and my ears. So, according to Howard, Akkad has been posting on a channel called Akkad Daily, 2 videos daily, which he finds incoherent. Yes, I know that there's a certain kind of fashion in racism. They even call it scientific racism. So there are people who think the key is race. I mean, obviously they want to, kick out all the people they don't like the look of, but that's going to be difficult. And I think really the only way that we can live peacefully together in a fair and harmonious way is to adopt Sharia. And I'm sure Carl Benjamin, being an Islamophobe, will not be countenancing this. So race is not a predictor of behaviour. I'm sure you would actually agree with me, however racist you are, that somebody with a certain belief system, okay, here's what I'm trying to say. There are 2 people, and one person, and there are 2 methods of predicting their behaviour. So you can get them to honestly state their principles, and then predict how they're going to behave, or you can just look at their skin colour and make a prediction of how they're going to behave. So I know that, racist white people like to say rude things about black people and say, oh, black people, look at them. If black people are going to be a victim of crime, the perpetrator is more likely to be another black person than a white person. But isn't it the same of white people who are actually quite treacherous to each other because they have no religion? So most of them don't even have the principle of submitting to truth, logic, and morality. And because they don't even see the point of it, you will find that they're very happy to stab each other in the back at the drop of a hat. And that's why they all hate each other and cannot get on and cannot organize any. They're not capable of focused political action because they don't know who their leader. In fact, they don't. Yes, they don't have a leader, and nobody wants to lead them because they're more trouble than they're worth. And I think Trump is just, barely hanging on, being leader of the so-called free world. while there are so many white people who hate him and want to kill him. So just as black people are very treacherous towards each other, so are white people who don't have an official moral system. And certainly black people who live amongst white people will be subject to this moral infection. Well, I understand why racism or scientific racism is very appealing to people who want to play Space Invaders, I suppose. It's sort of like a video game, and we see somebody, oh, he's a goblin, a demon, somebody, and you have to shoot, and if he looks a different way, you don't shoot. So this is why this is what simple-minded men in arrested adolescents prefer. They want to be racist and not have to. They want to judge a book by its cover, and they will want to believe in any silly nonsense that will support their prior beliefs. And I'm saying life is more complicated than that, and I'm sure white nationalists will be the first to agree with me that other white nationalists are very treacherous people. Howard says, Carl Benjamin states very clearly that he believes English culture is an expression of the way English people think and feel, and that okay, it sounds a bit incoherent, but people just want to be with people who are like them, and it makes them feel comfortable if they look like them too. And I'm saying it's never worked. It's never worked, even when Europe was monoracial, because white people are very treacherous towards each other. And even when they're all supposed to have the same religion, they just couldn't help but fight and kill each other. So, give that up, white people. Give it up, and just accept that people act on their beliefs, and the best way of predicting a person's behavior is to discover what they believe, and then you can predict their behavior. And they like to think that, race is, well, they keep insisting that race can be their religion, and I'm saying it can't, because you don't know. You can't tell just by looking at someone how he's going to behave. You need to ask him questions about, what he thinks and what he believes, and then you have to observe his behavior to see if he's the sort of person who tells the truth and keeps his promises. So it's not that easy. I know infantilized men want to think that, just by looking in a certain way, having a certain shade of skin color, they're going to easily predict his behavior. But this is foolish and doomed to failure. So anyone telling you racist shit, you should avoid, even though you kind of want it to be true. You want to think, it's like a game of Space Invaders. If it's a saucer-like thing coming towards you, you shoot it. And this is what simplistic people prefer to believe. But they must know, if they know any history at all, which they probably don't, that is not the case. So thank you, Howard, for raising the point of Carl Benjamin's racism. It's a shame that so many of these YouTubers, they prefer to be in their own echo chamber. They don't like engaging with people. They're more focused on producing content for their viewers and subscribers who like the same thing and don't want to be challenged. I roll in a different way. And I will be constantly developing and and keeping my eye on developments to better hone my ideas to the prevailing culture and environment. Thank you for listening.